Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Business. I am your host, Catryn Becker. In this podcast, we talk to all different kinds of people in business, whether they are employees, employers, and everyone in between. Today, I have my very first medical doctor who is joining the podcast. He is an orthopedic surgeon specializing in sports medicine out of North Carolina. Dimitri Thomas, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
I just want to let all the listeners know that Dimitri and I have known each other since we were 11.
Yeah.
So we have a long history of growing up together, and time takes us away from one another, and I'm so glad to be reconnected.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Yeah. Summer camps, chemistry summer camps. I remember that.
Yes, everyone, we are nerds and proud of it.
Yep.
I feel like the nerds have had a resurgence in recent years, and
yeah, absolutely.
I'm here for it.
Yeah, I'm all for it too.
Well, Dimitri, please tell everyone a little bit more about your background and what it is that you do.
Yeah, so I mean, from Texas originally, at least since I was 4. I was born in Sri Lanka. I'm a first generation immigrant, but moved to Texas when I was 4. Didn't leave there till I was 31. Specialized in orthopedic surgery, did my medical school in Dallas, did my training in the Army. After that, I moved to Kansas City and was the chief of surgery at Fort Leavenworth, which everyone knows has the prison, but is also the brain center for the Army, where all the officers train that go up through the Army. So basically everyone that's been anything in the Army has gone through that base at some time. And so basically, who knows, I may have taken care of the future chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I have no idea.
Well, that's really cool.
Yeah,
so I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we'll see in a few years. But yeah, so then after that, I got out because the Army has some weird requirements about subspecialty training, whereas unlike every other branch, that lets you go wherever to do a fellowship, which is a subspecialty training. The Army requires that if you go into sports medicine or hand, you have to do their own fellowships. And that's what I picked, to do sports medicine. And they couldn't make it work outside of that. Rules are rules. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll just serve my time. And then I got out and did a sports medicine fellowship at the University of Missouri. Then after that, went up to Annapolis, Maryland, and joined a practice there. Beautiful area, ridiculous cost of living, but a very, very beautiful area. And then moved down to North Carolina after a couple of years for various reasons. Prime amongst them was my wife had more of an opportunity down here. So that's how I came here. And I do orthopedics with an emphasis on sports medicine, but I am in a small town, so I kind of do most everything other than elective joint replacements.
I am fascinated that you went into the Army.
Oh,
Knowing you as a child, not that you weren't patriotic, but I just never saw that for you. So when I learned that you went into the Army, I was very, very surprised. So I would love to know kind of the thought process that made you choose going that direction.
Yeah, no, and I can very clearly tell you when that happened. And it was, I always respected the military, always admired them greatly, but didn't think it was for me because I was like, why would I join something we're not at war? What's the point? And then 9/11 happened. And I was like, oh, I guess we are at war. So I don't remember it this way, but my mom tells me that I wanted to like drop out of college and join the Army right away. And she's like, I didn't bring you out of one war zone to go die in another one. Finish your college first. And I was like, fine, I'll do that. So finished college, but while I was still in college, I signed up to do the Army Health Professions Scholarship. It's called HPSP, and it's basically they'll pay for your medical school once you get accepted to a med school, and they'll pay for whatever school. Now, I went to Dallas because I'm a Texas boy. I didn't want to leave the state, so it was very cheap. But if I'd gone to one of those schools that was like $50,000 a year, they would have covered that whole thing too. Financially, yeah, it helped, but my med school wasn't that expensive. But I wanted to serve at that point. So I did it. So I could basically kill two birds with one stone. When I graduated residency in 2013, then you automatically start going down the deployment list, and deployed to Afghanistan in the beginning of 14, I believe.
Well, and
And
that's some huge dedication, because 9/11 happened in 2001, which when I say those numbers, it makes no
yeah,
sense because it feels like it was yesterday.
yeah,
So that is some serious dedication to feel that pull in 2001, when everyone's emotions were heightened. We were all
oh yeah.
afraid and scared. And then you continued to stay on that path for 13 more years.
Yeah, yeah. I graduated college in 2004, and I kind of set the course. Like once I signed that scholarship, then it was set. So I made that decision in like 2002 or 2003 or whatnot. So, but yeah, I didn't get out of the Army till 2017, and quite frankly, had I been able to have the flexibility to stay in or to do my fellowship at a civilian institution, because you know I believe in getting different thought processes. And West Point has a very good sports medicine fellowship, but the problem is everyone in the Army that is trained in sports medicine is trained there, and so it's kind of like an inbreeding of thought. And so I wanted to like be able to bring some new thought in and teach residents and stuff like that, but that's just not the way it works. And
Mm.
so I was like, oh, and the guy that made all the decisions, the consultant to the Surgeon General, who's actually one of my attendings, he's like, yeah, no, I get it. I'll write you a good letter. And so I did, and then I did my fellowship elsewhere, and that's history. But yeah, no, I was prepared to have the long drawn out slugfest with my wife about staying in, because I loved it. I loved the camaraderie and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm, my husband served in the military as well. So I understand from his perspective, what I have seen and what that means. But, you went into Rice in
Hmm.
2000
Hmm.
with a degree in biomechanical engineering. Is that correct?
Yeah, bioengineering, technically. Yeah, yeah,
So
correct.
had you already decided that was going to be your major before 9/11, before you decided you wanted
Yeah,
to go that
yeah,
direction?
because I knew I wanted to like design stuff, and have the ability to like design my own equipment and stuff like that, which I haven't done yet. But actually, these last few days, well, not last few days, but last few weeks, I have something in mind, but I just need to figure out how to like use SolidWorks or something like that to like make a CAD drawing, which before we started recording this, I was telling you I barely use my computer for anything now. So that would be like one of my laptops, I have two laptops. One I bought just to run like a deformity correction software or whatnot. But prior to that, the laptop I had been using up till about a few months ago is a MacBook that I got in December of 2011.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so
You
I
really
just
got your money's worth on that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it's just like, yeah, I really don't use a computer a whole lot. It's the stupid phone now we do most everything on anyway.
Isn't that wild?
It is.
It's
It is.
it's absolutely wild.
Yeah.
Okay, so sports medicine. So
Mhm.
what was the thought about going into that branch? The medical field is wide open. You could go
Yeah.
into a million different
Yeah.
directions.
So I liked orthopedics because you get to fix stuff and it's like instant gratification like that. And, I know we're planning on talking about where medicine is going later and we can get more into it, but orthopedics, I feel, is very, as far as medicine goes, is very a job secure thing, because like internal medicine and stuff, people taking care of diabetes, technically you could prevent a lot of cases of diabetes from ever happening, like with good diet and public health policies and personal responsibility. And you could, it's not going to happen, but you could theoretically like get yourself out of a job if everyone was like taking care of themselves and stuff like that with all these chronic disease things. Orthopedics, you're not going to be able to stop that. Like someone's always going to fall off their bike. Someone's always going to crash a car. Someone's always going to roll their ankle, tear their ACL playing sports. So, and it's very gratifying. You just fix it and then you're done. And it's like bone broke, me fix. We like to play around. We're like the monkeys of medicine kind of thing. And that's all we want to do is just fix bones and stuff like that. But yeah, no, so and it's very mechanical, and I like that a lot. So that's why I wanted to do that. And coming out of residency, like I hadn't yet decided what I like doing, in my time being basically by myself at Fort Leavenworth made me realize that I really like taking care of young, active people and trying to get them back to sports. And one thing I really enjoyed doing was like cartilage transplants and things like that. So I mean, those are not common procedures, but I did a fair amount of them in the army just because of who you're taking care of, and
Sure.
things of like either taking cadaver cartilage, fresh cadaver, so someone that had died suddenly within 2 weeks, and transplanting their bone and cadaver into someone that needed it, or growing someone's own cells in a lab in Boston and then implanting them back into their body and stuff like that. So I just really like doing stuff like that. And yeah, I just think it's cool.
I I'm totally fascinated by the cadaver aspect. And I feel like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
could go down a whole
yeah,
rabbit
yeah,
hole, and we may circle back to that at the end
yeah,
if
yeah.
there's time, because that's just terrifying, but
No, yeah,
also like, wow, we do
yeah, yeah.
that?
Oh yeah,
Do you
do
think
it.
in the future, I didn't mean to ask this question, but I'm
Yeah.
going to ask anyway. So, like, thinking of the history of medicine, like we think
Mhm,
of the time when they used to do lobotomies on people when they were
mhm,
alive, or when like using leeches was the
uh-huh,
highlight of medicine. Do you think
yeah.
at some point that, future humans will look back and be like, oh my God, they used cadaver materials?
I mean, possibly. I don't think it'll be quite as like um heretical, I guess, so to speak. But no, I mean it's basically the same thing as like I mean, everyone thinks of like organ donors and stuff, like it's basically the same thing. I mean, I mean, until we can really lab grow stuff very efficiently and quickly. And I mean, people are working on that stuff, but I mean, that's not certainly not going to be in my lifetime. Um, yeah, I mean, it's kind of the best we you got. I mean,
It's
when you
it's
think
spare
about it,
parts, right?
yeah, no, it absolutely is. I mean, it's just like you have some kid that meets a tragic end in a motorcycle accident. I mean, in addition to taking their heart and liver and stuff like that, why wouldn't you take their bones and joints and stuff like that? So that's basically what it is. I mean, it's very tragic. And I mean, when I do that for people, I'm like, I tell them, well, we just got to wait for someone to die now.
Bum, bum,
Yeah,
bum.
yeah, yeah. No, and then it kind of sobers them, because and then they realize what the gravity of the situation is, and also that they have a responsibility to take care of what they're getting.
Which, wouldn't it be great if we all thought that from the get-go?
No,
And
I
that goes
agree.
back to your lifestyle diseases.
Yeah,
I've had that experience with a close family member, that they cured themselves of diabetes, that
yeah,
getting that diagnosis was a wake-up call for them. And it was like, oh, and I can just change my diet and, I'm okay.
yeah, yeah. No, for sure. And then other things like active smokers, like you don't do cartilage transplants in those people, because
Mm.
I mean, as it is, it's a very um how do I want to say? I mean, it's not a guaranteed home run by any stretch of the imagination. Even in the best of situations, and you don't want to have additional factors working against you that you can control. So if you're a smoker, you ain't getting that surgery.
Mm.
Sorry.
Which, again, the fact that here in 2023, people still choose to smoke,
Oh yeah.
and new smokers starting all the time with,
Oh yeah.
because, at this point, everybody knows someone who's died
Oh yeah.
as a result of smoking.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I mean, the sad thing, I mean, it is, and I tell them that, I'm like, listen, I realize it is addictive, and I realize that it has changed your brain chemistry, and at this point, like willpower, I mean, willpower alone is not going to do it. I mean, it is very difficult. I mean, I guess you could, but it is almost
It only gets you
impossible.
so far,
Yeah,
willpower.
no, it's very hard, because I mean, yeah, I mean, it's difficult, but it doesn't change the fact that for whatever reason, if you have nicotine in your system, the nicotine doesn't matter if you're just doing it for fun or it's because you're addicted. Nicotine is nicotine, and it's going to screw stuff up. So it's got to be gone.
Hmm. And you're speaking from North Carolina, where all the
Yeah.
tobacco was
Oh
grown.
yeah, I'm in Eastern North Carolina. That's like tobacco capital.
So I'm sure there's
So
probably still a lot of smokers that you come across. And
yeah, absolutely.
all right, well, that was a complete tangent that was unexpected, but that's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
happens on this
yeah,
podcast, is we
yeah.
just talk and let the conversation flow. But one of the things that I really wanted to talk about, because it's something that I've experienced going through engineering, some of the other guests that have been on this podcast have experienced with whatever line of work they were in. But as all of the education that you have had to do what you do, did you
Mhm.
ever have to learn about business and how to run your own practice?
No,
Why do you
absolutely
think
not.
that is?
Because they don't. I mean, I think as time goes on, that is probably going to start changing as like the newer generations realize this is a bunch of baloney that we're not teaching. But even as far, I mean, it's slowly shifting, but there's almost like a culture to a certain extent of martyrdom in medicine, where it's like, oh, you don't worry about the money will take care of itself. You just take care of the patients and work yourself to the bone and blah 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 blah. And that's just not reality. Maybe in an ideal world where you didn't have to worry about money and everything worked itself out, but I mean, we live in a world now where most people are in health systems, and I mean, we're well paid, but we're just well paid employees. We're not decision makers. You got some administrators sometimes hundreds of miles away making decisions. Like one of my, I mean, he's not my partner, but I mean, one of the guys that works at the hospital, he does eyes and all that. I mean, he had a private practice, very successful, but he sold out to private equity now. I
Hmm.
mean, he's a very well paid employee.
Which
And I
there's
mean,
nothing wrong with that. Let's be
no,
very
not
clear.
at all. I mean, the dude has like 10 Ferraris, literally. No, he literally does, but he's still a glorified employee now at this point. Um, but yeah, no, it's just, and the further we get along, people are just going to realize that you have to prepare people for this stuff. Otherwise, if, I mean, they always say if you're in a room full of people and you're wondering uh, who's the shark or something like that, it ain't you, kind of thing.
Right. Well, and I feel like, with medicine, I feel
Hmm.
like it's almost a different sort of skill set than what it takes to run a business. Like I think it's a unique person that wants to do both,
Hmm.
because the person who spends, and this is again my just interpretation, so please correct me if there's any
Hmm.
flaw in my logic here, but the person who has spent years and years and years learning how to do the medical procedures doesn't want to be the
Hmm.
person who's out there branding and marketing and doing
No,
the administrative work.
no, that is absolutely correct. But that is also the reason why then doctors in particular, well, I mean, providers in general, then end up getting policies made that may be not the best for them, is because we outsource that to someone else. Like you don't see, I mean, for example, you don't see a lot of like doctors as presidents of hospitals, but you may see like a nurse or someone like that. And even within that, I mean, there are some, I mean, usually doctors and nurses and other people like that, they're on the same team. But even within that, I mean, you start getting more and more focused, there are still some priority differences even within that. So it's like, yeah, if you don't, unfortunately, you have to prioritize that sort of stuff. Like a few weeks ago, I was actually considering like maybe I should do an MHA or something like that, and it just hurt my heart to think I was going to go back to school. I since
So what
decided
is
to,
what is an MHA?
oh, Masters of Health Administration or
Okay, so that
healthcare
would be the
administration.
kind of person that runs a hospital or runs.
Yeah, it's basically like an MBA for business, but it's for healthcare administrators or whatever. So that
Got it.
way, it's like the training required to know how to administratively handle a medical organization.
Bringing up MBA, that is something that I was super confused about. So,
Mhm.
going through engineering, working for other companies as an employee, I knew nothing about how to run a business. And so in my mind, it was like, well, I need to go get my MBA. So I learned how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And out of, the 100 or so people who were in my class, the majority, the vast majority, probably 75% plus, all had already business degrees and knew things about business. And this was just the next step in their career. There was very few people who were like me who had no idea and were coming in
Right.
completely fresh. And I just find it such an interesting situation that we find ourselves in, where that kind of information is not as widely accepted as I think it should be.
Yeah, no, it is. It's because everyone kind of gets into their own lanes, and the few that kind of want to step out a little bit and kind of branch off a little bit, not even that crazy, but still, it's like everyone kind of, the tendency is to like keep everything compartmentalized. And when you try to then veer off, at some point, you realize there's a lot of stuff that other people have already passed through and know that you just have to make up for at some point.
And now that you have, a couple of years under your belt in
Mhm.
different capacities, with the military, with the group that you're with now,
Mhm.
what advice would you give to someone who was thinking of going into medicine? Like, what do you wish you had known, or what would be something for a future doctor to look out for?
Well, I would say definitely get a understanding of finances, and not necessarily like, okay, know how to all the ins and outs of business, but at least like know how your retirement account works, know how stocks work, know like how to leverage your retirement, like when you should max out Roths and stuff like that, and things of that nature. But for someone going into medicine, I mean, yeah, your first few years, I mean, honestly, you can't worry about that much, because you just have to take everything in that need to keep people alive, and that's I mean, you're trying to drink from a fire hose basically. And so it's just, as you kind of cone down specializations and stuff like that, and you start specializing, then you have a little more bandwidth to like get some more information about other things like finance stuff. But I mean, I didn't start looking at this stuff till I was already graduated residency and stuff like that. So I
Mm.
mean, it's medicine's a little different in that, yeah, I mean, you have to really kind of put everything else on the back burner for a while till at least you get some sort of sea legs about you, and then you can start looking at it.
Well, and it's a great point. I mean, you're there to keep people alive.
Yeah.
And we hear so much about healthcare providers and burnout. Not that burnout is unique to that profession at all, but if that person burns out and makes mistakes, those
Mhm.
mistakes are much, much bigger than someone making a accounting error,
Yeah,
let's say.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I always tell people that one thing that contributes to my well-being is that I'm not, I mean, orthopedics is, especially sports medicine, is not typically a life or death thing. So I'm not worried about that in most cases, unlike general surgeons that are dealing with like perforated intestines and all sorts of stuff like that. So I'm my stress level is very low. But COVID also made me realize there are other things that are important. Like before COVID, I mean, like 9/11 was a big like turn. Like I don't really remember what I was like before 9/11. Like I completely did like a change after that. But COVID was also one of those points, because prior to that, I mean, I think it's a function of always, when you're in training, you're always in an academic setting and around that type of stuff. And my goal was to be like one of the people writing lots of papers and getting invited to conferences and talk and just be one of those big wigs that everyone looks up to. And then COVID happened, and then all of a sudden I realized no one cares about their little achy shoulder anymore. They're just dealing with like not dying on a ventilator and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? Orthopedics really isn't that important. No one really cares. The true medical heroes are in the ERs and in the ICUs and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, it's cool what I do, but I'm not I mean, I guess on call it's possible, but most of the time I'm not saving anyone's life, which is the way I like it. And um, and no, and so I was just like, you know what? I'm going to be the best doctor I can be. I want to stay up to date on everything, but I'm not going to kill myself going after all this like orthopedic glory, because I was like, I could tell a joint specialist, I can name the most prominent knee sports medicine surgeon in orthopedics, and the joint surgeons don't know who he is. So I'm
Mm.
like, do you think that the normal, like, we're all glad handing each other in a conference? The moment you step out of the conference room, no one knows who you are. So I'm like, well, why do we need to take ourselves that seriously? So after that, I was like, you know what? I want to do my best for my patients. I want to give them the cutting edge care and all that. But after that, I want to go home and have fun. So like here, I've signed up for like auto mechanic class at the local community college, which I used to go to, but the class that I've signed up for more than one semester of it, and after the first semester, it's in Spanish. And
Oh my
so, I mean,
gosh.
yeah, so I would go and just hang out with my buddies, but I didn't know what the heck they were saying. But then we'd go work on the cars and stuff like that. And there's just more to life than just work. And so that's why, I mean, I don't burn out. I mean, there are times that sure things get a little busier and stuff like that, but I mean, even my general surgeon colleagues, they're always like, man, you seem to have figured it out in terms of yeah, but a lot of that is just the path that I chose in terms of orthopedics and then sports medicine. I mean, I got lucky from that standpoint.
Well, and it sounds like you got the great mindset around it as well, in that what do these accolades matter if I'm not
Yeah,
taking care of my patients?
yeah. If I'm not taking my care of my patients, and if I'm not enjoying life, and if I'm not there with my wife and my dogs and stuff like that, it's like no one cares if you're like the most revered surgeon in the world. No one cares at the end of the day. It's
Right.
just like, so you got to take care of yourself.
Well, and I think that's really applicable to all sorts of different industries.
Yeah.
How you're treating your customers, your clients,
Hmm.
your coworkers.
Yeah. Especially your coworkers, especially I think, because a lot of times, um, I always think of like, people, especially after they died, like lionize Steve Jobs and even like Kobe Bryant and stuff like that. And I mean, rightly so for what they did, but by all accounts, they were not pleasant to be around at the time that they were actually in their heyday and with the people that they were working with or were working underneath them. I mean, if you were working for Steve Jobs, most people, it was kind of an unpleasant experience, I feel like. I mean, not that I have any firsthand knowledge of that or whatnot, but I mean, it's kind of like an inflexible, and that's kind of what made him great, looking at it from like a distance. But if you're directly working with that person, it can be a living nightmare.
That's so
And
true. And
yeah,
even if it's not 100% true, like, perception is reality. So if
yeah,
this is what is being perceived about him, that's what the
yeah,
history books may log.
yeah. So yeah, no, it's just one of those things where I mean, I feel like you have to, uh, in the pursuit of excellence and stuff like that, that doesn't give you carte blanche to be a complete jerk to those around you, especially those that may not be on your same level, either intellectually or educationally or whatever. Everyone's human. You just got to treat them with respect.
I love this so much, especially, I mean, you're a surgeon. Like,
Mhm,
surgeons have quite a reputation in culture, especially pop
mhm,
culture. Like, I think about Grey's Anatomy, right?
mhm, mhm, mhm.
Obviously the most accurate representation of the medical
Right,
field out
right.
there, right? Um, but as surgeons being very much top of the game, that there's quite a bit of ego that
Mhm.
comes with most surgeons. And I imagine that's something that you've experienced. It seems like you are very much without ego. It's a quite a
I
breath of
mean, I
fresh air.
certainly,
I know
I
you're
mean,
amazing at what you do. Like, let's not
well,
downplay your achievements here, but
but yeah, no, I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, we're all just humans. We're all, I mean, in the eyes of God, we're no better than one person's no better than the other, and I just feel that that's the way we should be. And just because, I mean, it took me a long time to realize that, but what you are is not who you are and does not define your self-worth. And I think everyone falls into that trap at some point. And you just have to consciously fight that, because society is trying to tell you that in certain ways. And you just have to realize that everyone has a role to play, and it doesn't give you the right to treat someone with disrespect. It's just not the right thing to do. And yeah, I realize that surgeons are known for that, and it's kind of excused, but yeah, maybe I might have a little more leeway than some people, but it doesn't mean it's right.
Mm. I think like in pop culture, like the character of Doctor Strange from the Marvel universe, and
I never
that
got into the Marvel stuff. Like, there's too many superhero things at this point. Like, I stopped with Batman.
oh, that's perfect. Well, then I won't go into any more of it, but he was a surgeon, and I think he was like a hand surgeon or something.
Oh, okay.
I don't know exactly. I just know
Interesting.
that he had his character arc, because I'm really curious in the stories that resonate with people. Like, what is it about each story? Like, what is it in that human experience that we see and recognize in ourselves that makes us interested? And
Yeah.
I utilize a lot of that when I'm working with people and coaching them and bringing them to it. But his hero's
Yeah.
journey was being completely egotistical and being a control freak and having to let that go in order
Yeah.
to achieve this other level that he didn't even know was possible at the time.
Yeah.
So it's a really
Yeah.
good
No.
allegory for things.
Yeah. No. I certainly. I think no. I think once you leave that at the door, you tend to be a happier person. Like, I mean, I feel like. Uh, I mean, I was pretty uptight in high school. There's no question, and I mean, and some of that's just you're worrying about the future and blah blah blah. But no, it was just, I mean, the way I am now, if I was what I am now back in high school, I think it would have been a much. I had fun in high school, don't get me wrong, but I think it would have just been a much more pleasant experience, not just for me, but for everyone around me as well.
Yeah, I think back, to high school and college even, and just the things I worried about at the time.
Hmm. Hmm.
Ugh,
No, I
so
know,
not
and it's
important.
yeah, and it's easy to say that in hindsight, but yeah, no, yeah, like I found myself saying this a lot. I think it was maybe Winston Churchill or someone that said it. It was like, youth is wasted on the young.
Yes, my mom always used to say that, and I was like, "You're crazy." And
Yeah,
now
yeah,
I
yeah,
understand it now.
yeah, totally.
But our brains aren't fully developed. So, I mean,
No, absolutely, absolutely not. Like, actually on Facebook, I was talking with one of my friends the other day. I forgot how it came up, but we were talking about like wasted potential. And like in high school in track, I was fifth in the state in the 400 meters, but I didn't take practice seriously. And like what I lift now in terms, like I didn't work out legs at all. And like what I lift now in legs is way more than I ever did in high school. And I'm 41, and it just blows my mind. I'm just like, what did I waste back
mm,
then? It's like just doing like I would go play in the long jump pit during track practice and play with the sand and not like run, because it was running. Training for the 400 is unpleasant, and I didn't like doing it. And it's the high school things like being, if you're cool, you're like defiant and all this kind of stuff. And I bought into that crap. And I mean, it still got me to fifth in the state and got me to D1 track in college. But I just wonder, like, if I'd actually like applied myself, what would have happened? It just eats at me. But yeah, we're not developed as teenagers as much
we
as
are
we'd
not.
like to think differently.
And when I was on the soccer team, I was the same way, like running just for the sake of conditioning. I
Yeah,
could not do it. But oh man, there's a ball, there's competition.
yeah,
I can put another gear on and get
yeah,
there. But
yeah,
just running around school
yeah, yeah,
for hours in the
yeah,
heat in
yeah.
Texas, no,
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
yeah, exactly. Houston humidity. I mean, that's just something else.
It's a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask a little bit, and maybe we'll spend a few minutes before we wrap this up, but
Yeah.
this is the good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah.
So what, in your opinion, has been the ugly that you've experienced in your career, and what have you learned from that?
I mean, the ugly, you just realize things are not as, I guess, straightforward and clear cut as you'd like things to be. I mean, medicine, no one's perfect, mistakes happen, that kind of stuff is ugly, but it's like a necessary part of learning. But then sometimes, like when I was in the army, like because I was the only active duty orthopedic surgeon at my base, I had like a couple of partners that were like older than me by like 10, 15 years. But since I was the only active duty one of them, I was the chief of surgery. And so I was their boss. And one of them I had to like essentially fire because
Mm,
he was like doing all sorts of nonsense and unethical things. And what actually got him was he was like stealing medicine, and not even pills. It was like, those joint injections, like if you have arthritis, he was using them on himself. And so it
gosh.
was it was stuff like that. But no, it's you realize that, um I guess some of the ugly is you realize not everyone maybe has the straightest moral compass, or ethical compass. And then, I mean, things that, other parts of ugly, and this has to do with like the finances and stuff like that. But unfortunately, medicine is a business. And to the point where, I mean, my wife hates me telling this story because she's like, it's not your story to tell and all this. So I'm not going to say where it happened and all this stuff. But she's in public health. She's got a doctorate in public health. She's very good at what she does. Her thing is trying to prevent chronic diseases, and she's very good at it. And she likes to utilize community health workers, which is basically you get people in the community that look like the community you're trying to help, because people tend to trust people within their own neighborhoods and stuff more than some outsider coming in, and you train them up to do stuff. And she was trying to get that implemented in like a clinic in a big health system, in an academic health system. And she was talking to one of the doctors, and one of the doctors told her, why would I put this in my clinic? It'll keep people from getting sick and keep them from coming to see me and stuff like that. And yeah, and I mean, I understand what he's saying, but at the same time, it's just like, that is just horrible. I mean, I was just like, dude, if I had been there, I would have kind of, I don't know, cussed him out or something. Because, you know, the sick are always going to be there. I mean, I don't think we ever have to worry about not having that. So to actively almost self-sabotage is just unconscionable, I feel. So, I mean, that's some of the ugly that's out there. And it has to do with the fact that, I mean, medicine's a business,
Yep.
sadly.
Well, and I think the root of that story is scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
And you can find that in every single business, every single industry where people are concerned of not having enough customers.
Hmm.
Of course, on
Hmm.
the healthcare side, it takes a bit of a morbid turn, but
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
it's still there, and it's still something for people to work against, and to realize that there is there is abundance if we're willing to look for it.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
Dimitri, thank you so much for being a guest on here.
Yeah, this was fun. This was really fun. I enjoyed it.
I'm so glad. I have thoroughly enjoyed catching up with you,
Yeah.
and seeing, because that's the crazy thing too, is that I still feel like kids.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, for sure.
You
Yeah, no,
know,
yeah, to me, you're always Katie from like sixth grade. And I mean that's how it is. We're always like, I see people on Facebook, like Lauren, some big business partner, but to me, she's just still Lauren that we just all be hanging out with and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just crazy. It's cool though. It really is cool, because it's like finally you feel like all that sacrifice we did back in the day of like working and studying for calculus tests at Starbucks, it's finally like paying off. It's like finally we're seeing the fruits of our labor.
absolutely, absolutely. Like a book that I wrote is in Barnes and Noble. And I was like, oh my gosh, I used to just like study in Barnes and Noble
Yeah,
all the time. And now I have a
yeah,
book there. Like,
yeah,
what?
yeah. No,
That's crazy.
that is really cool.
Well, this has been amazing. I am so glad that we got to connect. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your wisdom and what you have picked up along the way. I think there's a lot of applicable learnings that can be applied to anyone in any sort of industry or business model. So thank you so much.
I hope so. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So thank you to the listeners for being here. We appreciate you. Please like and review this podcast and share it with your friends. It would mean the world to me. Until next time, see you then.